Hi, everyone. Welcome to Virtual Agent Academy. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. I wanted to introduce you to our esteemed colleague, David, from the NLU product team, who will be presenting today's topic. Very exciting on migrating to NLU. So David, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Marcel. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Very nice to be here again, and looking forward to telling you something about the Virtual Agent Academy, and then in specific to moving from keywords to NLU. And this is like an entry-level to mid-level academy session. So don't expect to go too in-depth here, but we will walk through the basics as we have a lot of customers out there that are getting started on Virtual Agent and NLU and would like to know how to proceed. So let me walk you through the goals for today. So just quickly briefly go through the getting started and some good practices, then getting to understand what the migration to NLU actually is. Then I'll actually show you through an exercise to go from keywords to NLU, and then talk a little bit about how you could measure success. All right, getting started and recommended practices. So make sure that you are familiar and look around the Virtual Agent and NLU community. There's a wealth of information there. You can ask questions, you can give answers. There's a quick start index for all of the articles that are around there. And not only articles, by the way, it's also references to Now Learning or the docs to quickly get you started as you find your way in the Virtual Agent and NLU domain and topic. There's a great number of articles out there, also with very advanced stuff that you really would like to take care of. So make sure that you have a check in that index article. The index article is continuously updated, and I know that there are several articles out there that aren't being referenced yet, but we'll update that in the coming week or weeks. All right, first and foremost, think big, but start small. As you do your VA and NLU implementation, you really have to take care and approach things step by step and use an iterative approach. So the first step would be to make sure that you have an owner and you have governance in your organization around who gets to basically create what and maintain what. That is a critical starting point. Then obviously you need to define what your goals are and also the scope and timelines, obviously. And don't start out too big, as we will get to. Right? Make sure you agree on your timeline. And at first and foremost, if you really get into VA and you want to make sure you have an impression, the biggest difference between a search and a virtual agent is the fact that you can actually greet people and make that personal. So start the conversation with a personal and intelligent greeting. Don't forget to gather feedback as you go along, right? It's critical. Every step in the way, whether you're a week in or a year in, the feedback is critical into tuning and making sure that the goals that you set out of are still having a chance to be met, and you can actually set new goals along the way. Start off with 5 topics with each iteration, and then move forward. This way, this gives you a chance to basically understand how the 5 topics land inside your organization, and also are able to basically grasp the feedback that's coming in, because it's only supposed to be around these 5 topics, or unless the feedback is on a topic that you totally missed out on. Those 5 topics should be your main volume drivers as well, right? That's also important. We'll get to this later a little bit. Make sure that you define some metrics so that you understand if you're meeting those goals. All right, as you go along, you scale up, you use NLU, and this is what we're going to talk about today, to be able to basically add more and more topics to the virtual agent. And then have usage analytics in place to make sure that you understand usage and how they compare to your goals. All right. Let's talk about natural language understanding. So you may have seen this many times already, so I won't go in depth, but natural language understanding, basically a set of utterances that have an intent and sometimes an entity that your end users will use in order to have a conversation with your virtual agent, and in which they want to get work done faster. And work means they want to get something done, or they're having a problem that they want to get fixed, etc. So they have an utterance, they say something, and then they have an intent with that, and they just want to make sure that what they utter is resolved quickly and swiftly. And we will use both intents and the entities in order to make the flow more, let's say, human-like, as you can see here, but also faster because you can skip steps along the way. I think another important aspect to touch upon is that with the addition from NLU compared to just keywords, you can actually introduce your organizations and industry lingo into the conversation and have that work seamlessly, driving both the flow, the improvements to the flow, and the expectations for your end users. So how does this work? So you may need to make sure that you activate the appropriate and applicable NLU plugins. There's, you can follow the docs. There's very good articles on the community that will help you with this section. You create a new NLU model, or actually you create a new application in the studio, and then with that you create a new NLU model. And then you create new intents, or better, you just import existing intents, for example, for ITSM, HR, or CSM out of the box. You then map those utterances to an intent, right? You don't need to do that if you get the out of the box, because they already will have a set of utterances, but you may have specific utterances, the way you speak about things in your organization that you would like to add to that intent. You then make sure you train and test the model. So be sure to have a set of test utterances, right? What's a good set of test utterances? Well, you should, for every intent, right? If you have, let's say 10 to 25 utterances in which you train it, make sure you also have 5 to 10 test utterances. Enable NLU for VA. That's the easy part, because that's basically just flipping a switch, as you will see in the exercise. Then you map the intents, so the NLU intents, to the virtual agent topics. You then test the topic discovery and tune the NLU mark. And on the topic discovery, I'd like to add some specific information. As you can see here, this is a set of intents or topics that get a certain NLU score that you can see under the confidence column. And the highest, obviously, is the topic with the highest confidence. And in this case, this example, there is actually 6 topics that are above the NLU threshold of 0.7 that will all get pushed to VA. And then VA, the virtual agent, determines based on the delta, which in this case is 0.061, which is smaller than the delta. So it means that the delta, the difference between the printer issues, the first and the second intent, printer issues and check IT ticket status, is smaller than the default, meaning that all of the topics above the threshold will be presented to the end user in the menu. That is critical to understand. So it's not just the first or the second intent in this case, because the other 4 are outside of that delta. No, because the second one is closer than, or is close enough to the first intent, all of the topics above the threshold will be shown to the end user, as long as they have a matching topic. That's also an important note to make. There's a big article on it by Nabil on the community, so read up all about it. I will make sure that the PDF becomes available after the session. All right, so what's the difference between keywords and NLU? It's when you have your printer issues, you basically need to start typing a sentence, and along the way, the virtual agent will check whether or not there's a keyword match and will present in a menu the topics that might match the sentence that you're typing. In this case, you can see that currently printer issues has been matching, and then it will allow you to make a selection based on a menu or however you've designed the conversation. With NLU, you could actually skip a number of those steps because it picks up on the intent that you already typed, and it immediately goes down into the solution or into the conversation of the intent to the point where it either runs into, let's say, a question or an answer, and in this case, it will immediately point to, yes, I know what you want, you need a printer installed, so this is what you need to do. So let's move to the exercise, and I will switch to my screen here. So basically I have, I will make it a little bit bigger. I've installed all of the plugins around Virtual Agent, and NLU have also been installed because I just needed the conversations to be placed. I have a number of topics in here that are Open IT ticket, email issues, password reset, as you can see, VPN related. But foremost, what is important is, let's say, the setup topic. So the way that you have like a fallback scenario or a greeting, and that setup topic, greetings, is an interesting one that I briefly wanted to show you. Right, so this is the default one, which basically comes out of the box if you don't do anything. It's just simple 2 messages. I'm your virtual agent, let me know. It's not personalized, anything like that, right? So if you want to change that, you just go into general settings, and then you have your setup topics, and you can look at the greetings topic, and then you would want to change it. But right now we don't have anything to change it to, so the way to go about that is just search for the right greet. So in this case, I'd like a dynamic greeting topic, but because they're all basically static, you can't really change anything because they are part of the, in this case, the ITSM solution. You need to duplicate them. So I'm already installed. I have my application open, VA Academy, and I'm now going to go and say greeting dynamic, saving, and then publishing it. All right, as you can see, it's part of the category setup topics, and that's why when I go to general settings, I actually can go greeting dynamic, save it, and then if I go back to my agent and reload, it actually knows me, and it already sees that there's some more information that he'd like to show me. So this is a more personalized meeting, and you can go all out here improving that. So that's a quick start and a quick improvement to just making sure that it becomes more dynamic. All right, the second piece is to make sure that we move to NLU. But before that, I just wanted to quickly show what happens if I say, hey, need a printer installed, right? That's where I get my menu, right? So this is still without NLU in just keywords, and I select, okay, what do I have? Can't find the printer. And then I get my selection. So let's go back. Now we are satisfied with what we have, but we want to enable NLU. So we go to the NLU settings, also under general settings of the virtual agent. We click enable NLU, and you have to select your provider, in this case, ServiceNow. We only have English in our organization at the moment, so let's leave it at English. We could add German and French, for example, in the Paris release, but right now we just stick to English. And then before we can start mapping and changing the existing topics to NLU powered topics, because as you can see right now, if I go in here, we've moved away from keywords, and now we see a NLU model here, but we can't select anything because we also don't have it, and I have the wrong scope, which is not a problem. I'll just switch. But first I want to make sure I switch to my studio. So here's my studio, and I'm going to create a new NLU application, or part of my application is going to be NLU based. The full model includes both virtual agent, for example, and NLU. So if you're creating in a specific domain, and in this case, the greeting dynamic, I think I actually should have created it in global, not in the scope of my application, because it's ITSM specific. So I'm just going to call it our NLU model. So I don't have to limit it to ITSM. I could add all my company's intents here. And then instead of creating new intents, I'm just going to import intents from ITSM. And I know that I have printer issues. I want an open IT ticket. I have some challenges with my email issues. Those are the top 5 live. And password reset. So these are the 5 topics that we're going to start off with. And importing that will take a little while. Give it a little moment as we go along. Might be a good moment if there are any burning questions that I need to answer, Marcel. I could pick one up.
Okay, it looks like we have one open question, and it was more around what assets are available maybe to partners through the partner portal on maybe scoping guides or information about past presentations. So David, is that something we want to post to the community after the presentation?
Yes, I can talk to it on the community after the presentation. See, there's currently nothing partner specific that we have out there that's not available to all. But I'll reply to it in more detail on the community after the session.
Okay, great. And the other question that typically customers will ask is, let's say you want to include IT intents as well as HR intents, maybe some finance intents. Is best practice to keep the models separate, or is it to keep everything under one model so that you can train and test it against the other intents within that model?
Yes, it depends. Depends on your organization and the way you've set up the organization, how you're organized. Sometimes organizations are organized in such a way that there are different departments and they don't want the intents to be part of the same model because they want different people working on the model and owning the model. So that's sort of the governance side of the house. And then also it becomes let's say a manageability challenge if you have one single model with, let's say, 50, 60 intents, that also becomes kind of unmanageable from that perspective, especially if there are multiple domains involved. So it depends is the the honest question, the honest answer I can give at this moment, right? It depends on what you really want. If you start off, right, then start off with one model, and you can always, let's say, branch out from one model into multiple models as you grow or as you basically scale out to other domains. I think actually that's more of a good guidance.
Helpful.
More on that to come though in subsequent sessions. It's not I think this is a good question that we will answer in a follow-up where we talk a little bit more, let's say, on the 201 for managing your model and conversations. So it's a good suggestion. All right, so I've been publishing it, and let me just test. I need a printer installed. All right, so I think NLU is working at least on the application side of the house. Let me just go back into the machine and go back into my virtual agent designer. I go back to global because most of the topics I actually created in global. So let me just go to printer issues. And printer issues, as you can see here, this is the Paris release. So if you're on New York or Orlando, you won't see this tabbed interface. It will look slightly different. But the properties page is something that you all know about. And this one is important because you can actually pick your NLU model here. And as you can see, because we've published the model, we can now select it in the select box. And then in this area, this is where you select what intent should be associated to this topic, right? If you don't pick the right intent here, you're going to get awkward results. So be mindful. So when I save this and I publish this, I now should be able to get a different experience in my environments. So let me see if I can rewrite need a printer installed. All right. Okay. So, hey, we've improved a little bit, right? We didn't need to pick a topic. It found the right topic. But right now it's still asking, okay, what's the issue that you have? So, hey, I need a printer installed. So I would still choose this one. And the reason for that is that we did not use the entity matching and we've not configured that. And that is a different Academy session. That was actually the last Academy session that I did. So I'll make a note that I point you to that as we go along at the end. You can find the whole session around how to set up entities and basically how to improve this so that you could actually, with the can't find the printer on my machine or the need a printer installed utterance, you get a direct match to the need to install a printer. And your end users basically get served in one flow instead of having to answer 2, 3, or 4 questions. So you have to repeat these steps for each and every topic as you go along. So in this case, right, we have password reset. We check the properties, we select the model, and we select the intent. Publish. And as soon as I publish it, we've actually moved away from keywords to NLU. Open IT ticket, same thing there. You select your model, NLU model, select intent, and hit publish. Now, I do want to point you to something. If I quickly go back to my printer issues, all right? If you click on NLU intent, because you're dying to see what that does, it actually brings you to the intent as you saw it up in the NLU model. It's basically the studio version that now gets brought here, so you can also do some testing here and train the model from within the VA interface. The languages is more important, right? Because here you can actually see what the entity mapping does. So you need to pick what utterance it matches the user issue, right? So it matches the printer issue, right? There we go. And then you select what English word ties to what entity, if you have any. in this case, right, did the step work to you? We don't have any entity for it, so you don't select it. You save and publish, and then you've actually made your entity mapping successful. There we go. So as you did this, now you're thinking, okay, so what did we improve on compared to where we started off? How do I measure success? And that is challenging, but there is an answer to helping you out there as well, right? So, for example, when you have your topic discovery, so why didn't this utterance bring up the right topic, right? What should I do to make sure that we get a match? Keywords seem to be having better accuracy. Why isn't NLU working? And can I add the exact utterance to the model, right? Those are questions that you may have, or that your end users may have, or that your admins may have. We have a dashboard that's available that contains metrics on the topic, but at the moment we're revising the dashboard and we're rethinking let's say the metrics and the indicators that are on that dashboard. So as we come up with an improved version in the coming months, make sure that you take these tips home till then, and basically is to make sure that you have your utterances in such a shape that you don't have too many utterances, right? So even the out of the box are around 40 to 50, and sometimes that's even too much. You could start off with 10, 20. Around 20 is like a good size, and it's more important that you have the different phrases from, let's say, the different ways you say things inside your organization, to have those, than to have a high number of similar phrases inside your utterances. So remove those if they're ambiguous, right? It's also important that your intents are specific, but do not have a high overlap with other intents. So if you say, hey, I have a request intent, don't also have a request new password or request access to this application intent, because both will have a lot of similarities when it comes to requests. So that's important. And make sure that your utterances should be actionable, right? They should have an intent. You don't need to add things like I want or I need. You can add, sometimes they help improve let's say the accuracy, but it depends on the intent. All right, having said that, let's move on to a quick Q&A because we're already at the end of the session, I see.
Okay, we've had a lot of Q&A activity. These have all been answered in the Q&A, but just to recap, so we had a question around using the fallback topic to connect with a live agent. And that's really if NLU isn't going to correctly predict the intent, or it's something you don't currently support, fallback is a great option to then give the user the option to search or connect with a live agent. So I would say there, make sure you use the context variable live agent application in the fallback to give users the option to connect. And then another question is around associating new topics with maybe out of the box intents, and just getting into how those are mapped. So David, did you want to talk a little bit more about how those are used, and it's a one-to-one mapping between topic and intent?
Yes, there's just a one-on-one topping, right? You don't want to have an intent that you can't actually have an intent that maps to two different topics, at least not ones that are active and published. So you just it just doesn't make sense also from, let's say, a conversation perspective, right? You do want to go into a conversation where when the person asks for something like, I need a new laptop, or I need a new monitor, or I want to get my password reset, then you do want to make sure that it only matches with one of the topics in your environment. And the relationship to out of the box or custom, yeah, I think it's custom intents you need, because there's in your organization you may have a high influx of certain requests or incidents that are of a particular nature that we don't cover with our out of the box topics and intents. So then you have to create your own. The ones that we do create, we see a lot in the domains that we serve, whether that's CSM or HR or ITSM.
All right, I think that wraps up our question. Oh wait, I spoke too soon. We have one more. A question around, can you comment on the entity type of open-ended entity recommendations or tips on use of that particular entity that's new for Paris?
Well, we do want to, I can't comment on it, but I think that's indeed for a future session, a very good one to pick up on. I think that's the, let's say, the entities 201. Last session of the Academy, we did the 101, and this one is a very good one to address in the 201, especially since there's a lot more to entities than I talked about in the last Academy. So if you don't mind waiting up a little longer on that one, it's in the pen, so to speak.
Okay, and a couple other questions around.
Yeah, I can see them. Let me just answer them as we go along. Yes, so let's take make sure that we address also the languages discussions, right? So how do we talk about those languages, and how do we add them, and how do they translate to ITSM out of the box or HR out of the box? I think that's also a good one to cover in the next 201 session. Any way to add favorites to multiple virtual agents? I don't know exactly what you mean with that one, so I can't answer that specifically. If you could elaborate a little bit, that would be awesome. And then the last one, let's say, Vishal, by enabling NLU, do we need to map every topic to intent and NLU model? Like for the greetings topic. No, you don't need to do that. You don't need to map it to the NLU model.
David, I can add to this for the specific one. So you don't have to. What that means, this topic won't be discovered. So you can publish it, but without having an intent paired with it, that means it cannot be discovered with an utterance. So, for example, anything else that setup topic should not be discovered by an NLU. This is why it's not really mapped. Now, the greeting, if you think of this use case where your end user might say, "Hi, how are you?" You want to answer him with the greeting again. In this case, it makes sense to map it. But some topics, like anything else or fallback, yeah, you don't want it to be discovered via an utterance. I hope this answers.
No, it does not discover automatically. That's what Vishal is saying. So on both sides, right? When you have, let's say, intent discovery, so that's a new app that's in the App Store. It basically tells you what topics and intents you should be looking for in order to add as next to your model to cover. It doesn't build the intents or the topics and the topic flows, the conversations for you right now. So it's just a means of discovering, let's say, the direction you should be creating entities and or intents and topics. All right. I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, David, there was one more on virtual agent on multiple portals, and the asked was to keep favorites on both without adding manually. So I'm going to take a stab at interpreting that one. So what some customers may want is virtual agents on separate portals. They may want certain topics displaying from the Show Me Everything menu, but not necessarily displaying everything, but maybe relevant topics to that portal. And then through intent discovery, everything becomes available. So there's a couple ways to do that. You can, as part of the greeting topic, use the portal context variable to kind of drive, greetings and what topics display per portal. Or you could simply, say, I want these topics to show on this portal, and maybe remove these other ones. So there's a couple ways to do that. And there's some information out in the community to kind of guide there. But that is something that comes up quite frequently when there's a separate portal situation.
All right. I think that's it, Marcel.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And we will see you again in 2 weeks. So stay tuned.